Chimneys for Africa. How did a project for a small community in the Kilimanjaro desert of East Africa begin at a hackathon in North Scotland? Or perhaps we should step back a bit further. I had a love of Land Rovers growing up, and that transpired into models, paintings, drawings, until eventually in 2016 I purchased my first Land Rover. You'll see why the love of Land Rovers comes into this. I'm not just harping on about something that I particularly enjoy, because you see, it was my Land Rover that I truly believe won my wife. Why this part of the story is so important in Chimneys for Africa is because Natasha had worked for 6 years in East Africa. In particular, she'd worked with the Maasai, and these are some beaded necklaces that they wear while they're jumping. They were concerned about their women and children, and that they were inhaling lots of smoke from indoor cooking fires. Natasha at the time was working for a media organisation, so it wasn't really their field of expertise. So the idea that the problem lay dormant for a number of years until Natasha and I do get married, and we still own the Land Rover, and we're attending university in Scotland, and we decide to attend a hackathon. Now, whether that was out of boredom or I feel it was genuinely out of the fact that I've always wanted to attend a hackathon. You know, just the name is just fantastic. This one was a 24-hour competition. The topic was global health. Solve a problem that impacts global health. So we formed a team of 3 with a friend and decided to look at an issue particularly facing low to middle income communities. The project began in earnest in St Andrews, and I came up with an idea for a gravity powered fan, so a falling weight, such as a drink bottle or a bag of stones, and as that drops it powers a gearbox which then spins a fan. And this worked great in theory. I had some calculations to back it up, and what's more, the judges really liked it. So we won the competition. We won about £200, and we thought rather than going on a tour of the Highlands, which seemed quite appealing at the time on a student budget, we thought actually this idea might have some legs. We should do something with it. COVID hit, and we were pregnant at the time. So back to Australia we moved because we didn't have any jobs, didn't have any accommodation, and the bank account was rather dry. In Brisbane, I really got itchy fingers. I wanted to build something. I wanted to make this product work. And so I had this idea of building it out of plywood. So I constructed this big plywood gear system, and it was very time consuming, very cumbersome, very heavy, but it did prove that gears could work, but it also, that this particular idea had to be executed really well for it to work very well. At the same time, I reached out to a guy who developed a really beautifully engineered product called Gravity Light. And that was a similar device, well, he came up with the concept before me, where a falling weight would power a light. And that was a brilliant technical innovation, but it failed in the field because people couldn't be bothered pulling up the weight every 10 minutes or so when the light needed turning on again. And so that meant that we left this gravity-powered idea, but not before I had constructed a lovely Lego Technic model with a hanging cord from a blind that I salvaged from a bin. This worked okay in practice, but if you have a look at that, you'll realise it's a really complex gearbox in terms of manufacturing. And we've fast forwarded a little while. Quite a number of these journals have been filled with designs and ideas, and we're moving to Central Australia with a 2-week-old. So we do this massive 11-day road trip. That was the time in winter in a rooftop tent, taking the Land Rover, performed splendidly, and we moved to Central Australia to a really remote Indigenous community. It opened up this whole new side of Vesma, which was how could we repurpose existing technology, existing parts from a junkyard to make an extraction fan system for a hut. And the beauty of this community was it was so remote that it had its own dump and its own car dump. And I thought, perfect, fantastic. I've always enjoyed fossicking around dumps. So I took the landy out into the dump and I investigated some junk. An original Discovery 1. I mean, it's really testament that out of all these cars, there's only one Land Rover. They really just keep going. Old washing machines, fridges. What I noticed was the quality of junk has actually decreased. Like lots of single-use plastics, lots of really thin metals that rust or bend very easily. So it was more difficult than I thought to find a whole range of parts that would be suitable for building a Vesma fan unit. I did pull out a Radiator fan, and as you can see, the result wasn't too great. Yes. Great. Quite a bit of air coming out of that. Very noisy. It was also having to be powered by a 12-volt source with quite a high current, so it wasn't practical there. But the sheer beauty of Central Australia, being out there with people who were born on the land, who've been on the land for generations, gave me a real appreciation for what place meant to people. Place is really important. But then a work opportunity came up in New Zealand, and we had the opportunity to build a hut. And we thought this would be great. We'll be able to test our ventilation system in situ in a hut. It turned out to be one of the wettest summers, I should say, that New Zealand has had, with almost this tropical environment where it would rain at 10 o'clock on the dot every day. Even though the hut got washed away, well, not really, that's a bit dramatic, but even though the rain affected the building of the hut, the process of actually making your own dwelling was really valuable. It said to me that we're not just installing this in a random hut somewhere, we're actually installing this in someone's home. And they've spent hours collecting the materials, putting it together to form a home. We went back to the drawing board and thought, what do they actually want? They want something that's minimally invasive. They want to be able to continue doing what they're doing just with less smoke. And so then we came upon this idea of a simple smoke hood. So a cone type device which we could sit over the fire and then channel through a flue using convection currents, using the pressure differences to remove the smoke from the fire. This involved laser cutting some steel and then folding and bending it. And this was something I thought we could actually do in country, provided they had access to a laser cutter, or at least it would provide a demonstration model for then us to work out how to build it in the country. Which brings me to the present, Chimneys for Africa. In about 3 days' time, I head to Kenya, where I'm getting one of these products manufactured at a laser cutter, and I'm taking it into the community and installing it into a hut. Join me as I go for a rollicking adventure and hopefully gain some really valuable insight. Well, I know I will, because I go with my eyes open, with my ears open, ready to listen and to see and to touch what's next.